at 6:03. And if you could all, well, if you care to join us with flag salute, please do so. Salute, pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
In recognition of this free speech board business agenda item, I'm welcoming all and saying and noting that if saying the Pledge of Allegiance is not a requirement to participate in the business of this board, if you don't say the Pledge of Allegiance for religious, political, social, or personal reasons, you're welcome here as an equal participant in the business of this public school board.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. Okay, adoption of the agenda. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Anderson. And a second?
One second.
Thank you, Mrs. Pope. Roll call vote. Dr. Lee?
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson? Aye. Mrs. Pope? Aye. Mr. Bruno?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Agenda is adopted. Comments from the audience regarding items not on the agenda. Mrs. Hunt, do we have any comments? No. And no more comments from anyone here in the room. Okay, great. We'll move on to item number.
Hold on.
I'm sorry?
I blew it. I logged this out.
Oh, I forgot that you did that. Right.
My apologies. I did it. When I turned my other computer on, I logged this out.
It's actually not on there. Just a note that we did meet in closed session and no action was taken. Sorry for skipping over that. All right, we're all back online now. All right, so item number 9, consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
All motion?
Thank you, Mr. Bruno, and a second.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Lee, and roll call vote. Dr. Lee?
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson? Aye. Mrs. Pope? Aye. And Mr. Bruno?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Consent agenda is passed. Go ahead.
Were you talking about the consent calendar?
Yeah.
So I just want to acknowledge, we did, and I think some others may be on their way, but Mr. Brett Helmsley, just to congratulate him as our new principal. You just appointed him to the principal of he signs to Oak Hill and HK Evans Peterson to VP for Center High School. So we congratulate and welcome them.
Nice. Welcome. All right, you're gonna love it here at Center.
They've been here for a few years.
You're gonna love it even
He's
more.
new.
Okay, at this time, item number 10, we are going to recess the open session so that we can convene a public hearing on the Local Control Accountability Plan, LCAP. Ed Code Section 52062B2 requires that the governing board hold a public hearing on the LCAP. The purpose of this hearing is to set aside time to produce information to the public and to receive public comment and input on the district's LCAP and budget overview. Do we have any comments from the public or the board or anyone in the room? Anyone?
I just want to say that was the longest LCAP I've ever read, Mr. Bailey. But thank you very much for getting it together.
And if I could briefly, if we have some slides we'd like to go over, just to introduce, to make the public aware and then see if there's any questions. But I want to echo. Hello? It is. I just wanted to echo the same comments that you did, Ms. Pope, that we do this as a joint effort when we put together our LCAP, but I need to give credit to Ms. Jabali for putting our voices into one. The first time we ever did this, we did it as multiple voices, and it didn't work, did it, Tammy? So we have charged Tammy with that, so I appreciate the effort that she makes to put that all together. So I'm going to try to share my screen here as we go forward. Let's see. All right. So what we wanted to do is, as we go through this, I wanted to share with the board and the community just an overview of what the LCAP is, what we're looking at and some new enhancements that we're doing with the LCAP. The plan, as Ms. Pope did point out, is longer. It seems every year it seems to grow each year. I think it's probably close to 200 pages now, but it does contain 4 components. We have the budget overview, which is a new addition for parents, which in our district, we had a lot of parents saying we really would like to see something a little simpler than the regular budget because it's so hard to interpret and go through. It has our annual update that comes annually that reviews the progress we've made on the LCAP, the LCAP actions and services as it is, and then the last component, which is new and usually not a part of this, but COVID has given us some new areas, is the local performance indicator self-reflection piece. So tonight, really what we're focusing on is the third portion I mentioned, the LCAP, the plan for actions and services. And if I can advance myself here. So what is the local control accountability plan? It's a 3-year plan that describes the goals, actions, services, and expenditures to support positive student outcomes and address state and local priorities. The LCAP provides an opportunity for local education agencies to share their stories of how, what, and why programs and services are selected to meet their local needs. It's a 3-year plan. This is year 1 of 3. It does not mean we adopt this and we're stuck in it. The nice part about LCAP is it's a living, breathing document. You may make more progress on some areas, you may make less progress. Each year we come back and update it and bring it back to the board and the community to show where we are. The local control accountability plan development. This one, we really started a new process. Last year for 1920 was supposed to be the very first year that we were planning for our 3-year plan. COVID pushed that out a year. So back in January 2020, we had started some focus groups, had pretty good turnout from families and district staff from a cross section of our community brought in. We did some great table talks, brainstorming. So instead of throwing that data out, we kept that information along with it. We surveyed our community throughout that time. We did Zoom meetings, we did share out publicly. We developed a draft plan from all of that information, shared that draft plan with stakeholders from our associations to our parent groups to we've had it on our website, different things just to try and get feedback and input. And as we receive that, we utilize that to see if we can add it and put it within the plan. The next part is where we are today, or actually, excuse me, we do share it with our county office. The county office reviews it and goes through it and gives us suggestions, input to make it better, more friendly. And then a new component is through our SELPA, the Special Education Local Plan. They asked now that we share it with them. So they've also reviewed this plan. Then during tonight, we have our public hearing. It's an opportunity for more input from our community. And then we adjust anything that might come out of tonight that we want to adjust to put in there. And then finally, next week, we do come back on June 16th to see if we can approve the LCAP, and then we publish it. In conjunction with the public hearing, as you'll hear from Ms. Coronado in a little bit, they asked that you bring the preliminary LCAP and the preliminary budget for the year at the same time. So that's why we have that in our meetings today. And then, of course, we do bring this back annually and take a peek at the progress that we've made. So through all that data surveying, pulling things together, we ended up modifying our goals from the previous LCAP. And I'm going to just take a minute to read them because we wordsmithed them around and around and around for quite some time. So our first one is all students will graduate college and career ready through a high quality instruction coupled and with interventions and support through a multi-tier system of supports that eliminates barriers to student success. Number 2, all stakeholders will experience a school and district climate that is physically and emotionally safe and supportive. And goal 3, all students will benefit from improved partnerships and communication with all stakeholders. And you might think, well, why 3? Why not 4? Why not 1? The state has state priorities. You have to make sure your goals address all of those state priorities when you're developing it. So sometimes you think, well, why does that seem like that's added in or that seems awkward? It's to try and make sure that we're addressing all of the criteria that the state is requiring. If I move next, just to kind of give you a glimpse of the significant sized document, many of the actions and services that are in it are things that we've carried on. For goal 1, which was our graduate standards-based curriculum, teacher collaboration time, really focusing on our PLC work, using data to drive our instruction. new teacher induction program, EL supports, special ed supports, and our CTE offerings. Those are things we are continuing with our plan, but enhanced this year through not only the LCFF dollars that we received, but also through the COVID dollars that we received. So our ESSER, we are able to broaden our academic interventions. We now have multiple staff that we've added to all of our sites to support that. A social emotional intervention, we were able to secure counselors and some social workers to be a part of our team. Full day kindergarten. Spinelli was our only school site that had full day kindergarten previously. We will be expanding that this coming year to all school sites. Our kindergarten folks are excited because if you know kindergarten, used to be a fun play time, which is important for students, but it got so condensed with academics that the full day, what we've seen at Spinelli is they really enjoy, they can have a more pace, do some of the things that they are able to do, and not just have their time where they're just purely academics. They can actually do calendar and money and all the quote fun kindergarten things. Development of our engagement team, which is also part of our goal too. Our AP classes, our advanced placement classes, looking at the enrollment in those and seeing if we're mirroring our populations. Is it representative of our student body, or is it all targeted with one group? And so we're looking at that, and we'll be enhancing opportunities to try to do that with an intervention counselor we have at the high school that can allow our counselor to have more time to actually focus on their students and have a smaller caseload. And then professional development around pretty much all of these areas that would help support. Goal 2, which is that school climate, for lack of a better term. And in that, what we're looking at is continuing our Safe School Ambassadors program, our SEL Equity Task Force continued, our education-related mental health services for our students who are on IEPs that are receiving mental health support, our homeschool transportation, which as we talked last meeting, if we can expand, we certainly want to, because we know that enabling our kids to get to school is a barrier. Let's get more kids to school if we can. Health services, and this is also an expansion because we have brought on more health support, and we're looking at broadening that continually. And then facilities master plan, and where we're going with that is the idea of accelerating some of our HVAC improvements that we talked about, putting some money aside towards that as a result from the COVID, so we can start from the COVID fund, so we can start making those advancements on our HVAC units sooner than later. And then what have we enhanced? The attendance engagement through our engagement team, expanded PBIS as positive behavior intervention support. That was it, I think 3 of our schools. We will be bringing that to all 4 campuses starting next year, K-12. And I'm going to commend Mr. Ferguson for bringing his team along to get the high school, Center High School, and Mr. French for getting the high schools as a part of that, because it is a nice component where we see 4 of the schools are speaking a specific language. And as they go up, the middle school could always see, wow, that person came from Dudley. They were in a PBIS environment versus someone who might not have been. So having that same common language will help us significantly. Expanding school connections through athletics, activities, and clubs, diversity and cultural sensitivity training. We know that our population that we're serving has changed. We want to make sure and ensure that we have the ability to understand and meet with our community. School climate survey through Panorama, using that data more frequently. Our SEL screener, which will allow us, especially as we come back with COVID, to make sure that we understand the learning that students are having, not just academically, but also as a social and emotional piece of that. And then trauma-informed practices training, which also we'll be looking at district-wide as we come through this pandemic, and being able to be informed of what trauma our students and get a better understanding of our students. And then the one that didn't make the spreadsheet up there is Team Assist. We've been utilizing Team Assist in our summer school programs. We've used it before at Dudley Elementary in North Country, and it's a program where students participate during recess and lunchtime recess through a structured game opportunities that's been really positive received. And with COVID dollars, we can help support that for the coming year as well. And then goal 3 is continuing. This would be that partnership and communications. One of the things we really want to do is broaden those partnerships. We want to make sure not only we're communicating to our district stakeholders, but how do we broaden it to those stakeholders that are outside of our district, meaning they're not connected, they may not have kids, but they're in our community. How do we partner better with with, let's say, PERCOs, or as we grow as a district, how do we partner with our outside groups? Adult education, this year we did 25 students got their GEDs through our program, which is fantastic. Communication service, calling, texting, email, and website, continuing to make sure we're getting the message to our families in a method that works for them. Ms. Pope may like an email, Mr. Bruno, Treasurer Bruno may like it as a text. So how do we communicate more and get the information to our families? And then continuing with the support of our Student and Family Resource Center, enhancing that community and partnerships, our outreach, support, and community engagement offerings through our Student and Family Resource, really looking at how Mr. Miranda's department can really partner with us on outside groups to bring resources back in. In fact, we have a meeting next week with a local non-public or nonprofit that wants to bring some things in. So we're going to sit down through that and talk through with them. And then increase student and family support services. Really what this is we've added more employees to that outreach group. A social worker has been hired that's targeting our homeless and foster youth students to help our families who are in those categories through the department there at our Family Resource Center. And then where that takes us then is it takes us to the idea of where we are tonight. We're looking for expressing this, see if there's any more public input. And then if there is, and we adjust it, we will make the adjustments, then bring this back on June 16th board meeting for final approval. And at this point, we would love to answer any questions, take any input, whatever. Thank you, sir.
I just have one question so far, just one. I'm curious about on the parent summary. I guess this is kind of the parent summary, right? The overview for parents on page 2, and it talks about learning loss mitigation funds. It seems to me like we're supplanting the LCAP funds with the learning loss mitigation funds, and weren't those intended to be like an enhancement, not a supplanting of funds?
So you can explain it better.
Like we're not using the original set of money for what it was
Correct.
for.
So there are allowable uses for the funds, and we made sure that we met all of the requirements for them. But there are some, for instance, I'll go over my budget, like technology. We were able to use the funds to buy Chromebooks for everybody because everybody needed them to work from home. Normally, I would give the technology department a $400,000 budget, and instead we used COVID money to pay for that, for all of their technology needs. So yes, we did use some COVID money where normally we would use general fund, but that was very much allowed.
No, what I think you're missing. So what I'm talking about is in the learning loss mitigation, using the learning loss mitigation fund money instead of the LCAP money. Is that the same as what you just said? I'm sorry. I'm like, there's LCAP, okay, let me read it to you. Supplemental concentration funding will be used to continue to provide supports afterwards. So right now, they're being used to meet the needs of high need students in lieu of supplemental and concentration funds.
Right. So the supplemental concentration funds are still held in their pot of money to be used at a later time when we need them.
I see.
Yes.
I see. So it's not like we're, okay, we're just
It's
saving them for future.
It's almost, think about you have ongoing money versus categoricals. These COVID dollars that we call the ESSER will expire.
Right.
If you don't use them, you lose them. And so we're targeting based on those requirements and enhancing in many, many areas.
Okay. Well, and also I would imagine that the concentration and supplemental funds can be used for things that the learning loss mitigation funds cannot be used for, correct?
Yes, they target our special needs population, so our foster
that
youth
gives
and
us-
homeless and EL, et cetera.
Yes.
So it has some of the same focus for sure, but
It
it
gives us
is,
an
but they don't
opportunity.
expire.
To do some things that we couldn't do with the COVID money.
Correct.
Right, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Any
Were
other
there-
questions?
Were there any public comments about our LCAP before I ask my questions?
Why not?
I do not have any public comments.
Okay. So my question is, looking at the data points, and I noticed that all of our data in our LCAP is aggregated data, and I'm curious about that. And if there's a plan to disaggregate and to set some goals that are based on that disaggregated data, so that we're really targeting the students who are struggling the most, and that are shown to be struggling the most through the disaggregated data. I'd really like to, if possible, see some movement towards a disaggregation of the data and the achievement data specifically, and then goals set around that. Is that something that's possible, Scott, or is this from an old? I noticed some of the data's from like 2015, 2016. I was just kind of curious on that too, and where we're kind of starting from as our baseline.
So yeah, so that is absolutely in the works. And a good example was our advanced placement work, that we will utilize the most recent data target. We already know that it does not, our enrollment in our AP classes is not representative of the overall student population at Center High School. So we are using that. You will see more as that comes forward, where we are disaggregating more. In addition, when we start looking at academic, across the district, we'll be looking at the groups and things like that. So absolutely, that is 100% a part of the mix.
So is that something that can be incorporated into next year's LCAP, like specifically utilizing disaggregated?
So the metrics that we use, we'll start breaking those down as we start reporting that out. So I think it will be reflective as we go forward. And I'm but is that a correct statement?
Yes, but a lot of the metrics are required by.
Okay. Yeah. So that's true. So thank you, Tammy. So we're breaking some of ours down. Some of the metrics are required by the state. So we have to report what they say. That does not inhibit us later from coming back and breaking that data down. But we have to cover
But for the LCAP, there's requirements on how it can be reported. That's unfortunate.
It doesn't stop us.
Yeah, especially for the A through G requirement completions too. I was looking at that. I'm just really curious to know about our different subgroups and how they're progressing, towards that, because that's college and career readiness. I mean, right there. So I'd be really curious to just take a deeper look if possible.
And we can definitely, we bring that data back in the matrix, we can see that overall number they require, and then we can go further and actually break it down through our systems.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Any more comments? Okay, we will.
I just want to say one more time, I just have to appreciate Ms. Givelli's work on this. I know we probably, say it too much, but this is a big undertaking. And I really do appreciate what she's done. And I know I can be a scatterbrain at times, and we'll throw ideas, we'll be in meetings, and she does a great job of putting all of those things together. I always laugh. I always say, Tammy, you're my voice, and you're our voice of the community, because we take all this information and put it into something. And I want to give extra kudos for that, because that is a challenge. So thank you, Tammy.
Thank you, Tammy. Comments or questions? We will adjourn the public hearing at whatever time that clock says. 6:27. And now we will convene another public hearing. This one is on the 2021-22 preliminary budget. And code section 42127A1 requires that the governing board holds a public hearing on the proposed budget at a public meeting. The purpose of this hearing is to set aside time to provide information to the public and receive public comment and input on the district's spending plans for the upcoming years. We will convene at 6:28. Thank you, Mrs. Coronado.
Are you going to move there?
I can, if you just give me the nod,
Okay, all right, sounds good.
but I'm going to close this down, so give me 2 seconds.
Okay, sure.
For whatever reason.
And I'll just take that time to remind you that in the budget cycle, the district has to adopt our budget before the state actually adopts their budget. And so this is based on information from the governor's May revise. And when the state budget comes out, we'll review that, and if there are any material differences, then in August, I'll come back with how the changes affect the district.
Dr. Lee, can you see that? Am I sharing okay? No.
Not presently, no. Now it is. Now I
Okay.
see it.
Awesome.
Okay. So in the narrative for the budget, I put in detail a lot of the changes that the budget that the governor is proposing, but I just pulled out the bullet points of the topics that will affect our budget specifically. And so the first one is our COLA increase, which is great. So the governor is proposing a 1.7% COLA for 21-22, plus he deferred the COLA from last year. So we're getting a compounded COLA from last year, which is 2.31%, bringing us to 4.05% COLA. And then he's adding on an additional 1%. So he's calling it a super COLA of 5.07%. So that is added on to the amount we get per pupil for LCFF funding. In January, it was a 3.84 proposal, so that's higher than he had proposed a few months ago. So that was good to see. Special education is not getting a full COLA, but is getting a 4.05% increase. A reminder that goes to our SELPA, and they determine how that is dispersed to districts. So it doesn't come directly to us based on our own special education population.
What's the full COLA for special ed?
What's the what?
You said we're not getting the full?
Well, we're getting 4.05% instead of 5.07% that we would get for LCF. Also in the governor's proposal is to expand TK to all 4-year-olds in California by 24-25. And as part of that, he wants a 10 student per 1 adult ratio in TK and kindergarten classes, and a 20 student to 1 adult ratio in 1st through 6th grade. Again, that is by 24-25. So we'll be watching to see if that makes the budget. The June 2022 apportionment will still be deferred to July 2022. However, all of the other deferrals have been dropped. Remember, we had a lot of deferrals from this past year. So those are still in play, and they will still be paid back at the same structure. So February's deferral is going to be paid in November, March, and October. April and September, May and August, and June will be paid in July. So we still have about 5 more months where we'll be getting our money from last year. Remember, I had said at this time last year that we were going to run out of money by now, and we were going to have to take out loans. The COVID, we're grateful for that relief money. There is no pension or tax relief included, so the STRS is increasing and the PERS is increasing. I did hear the legislature say that they want to include that in the budget, so I'll be watching to see if they help out employers with the cost of retirement benefits increasing. The state unemployment insurance, usually it's 0.05% of payroll, but because a lot of people applied for unemployment insurance and received unemployment insurance, that cost is passed on to the employer. So it is increasing 1.18% of payroll. Again, I heard the legislature say they want to take that back to 0.05 and have the state absorb the cost of the unemployment insurance. So in 2014, the public school system stabilization account was created by voters. It was passed. As a result of that, any capital gains in excess of 8% of the general fund has to go into a budget stabilization account. So there were a lot of capital gains in the stock market last year. And so there was a lot of money coming in to the state of California. Some of that budget stabilization account money goes into the public school system stabilization account. When that amount, so the state's required to set aside $4.6 billion in the public schools system stabilization account. When the reserve exceeds 3% of the K through 12 portion of the Prop 98, et cetera, it triggers something for the districts. Starting in 2023, K through 12 districts have to keep their reserves below 10%. When I forecast ahead in 21-22, our reserves will be 19.88%. 22-23, when this year it takes effect, will be about 23% reserves. So we need to spend down our funds and come up with a really good plan to benefit students and employees so that we can bring the reserves back under 10%.
What kind of restrictions are on those funds?
They're all unrestricted funds.
So we could get a.
But, yes, but they are one-time money. So it's hard to do ongoing salaries and benefits with these funds.
I think Mr. Easton's already getting money right.
But capital projects, absolutely.
Thank you.
Fund 17 is part of our reserves, and we are keeping some of that money held because we may have to pay for parts of Rex Fortune Elementary before we're reimbursed. So we need to keep some of that money to prepay. When I'm doing the budget, I'm not really looking at what we spent our money on. That comes with unaudited actuals in September, but I still wanted to give you a brief update of where our relief funds stand. So our round one update, it's 2 slides, and we had 6 different pots of money, 6 resources. So you can go ahead and look at this. In the first pot, the CARES ESSER 1 money, we received about $1 million that has been spent. The ESSER 2 money, we just recently received $4.8 million, and we've spent about $250,000. So that is where a lot of our budget is being pulled from for the HVAC and the things next year in our budget. There was the governor's emergency education relief, and we have about $100,000 left in that of the $300,000. Next slide. The CRF money, it was $3.3 million. We fully expended that. And we have some state money, $350,000 fully expended, and some more COVID relief funds from the state, and that was just $70,000. So we have a $5,000 balance that has to be spent by June 30th, and it will be spent. I just need to transfer some charges.
So in ESSER 2.
This is 31, let's say 21, right? So June 30.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
June 30,
Yeah,
21.
21, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So ESSER 2, we still have funds available. When do they need to be spent?
So ESSER 2 needs to be by September 2023.
I think it's 3
Yeah,
for 2. For ESSER
2
2.
is 3, and 3 is in 2024.
So ESSER 2 is 2023.
2023 September.
And do we know yet when ESSER 3 is going to be need to be expended? Do we get that yet?
Yeah, it is September 2024.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, ESSER 3, how much do we have remaining?
We have not received it yet,
We haven't received.
but we're
Yeah,
getting it.
we go the other way.
So that is the next slide. This is round 2 funds. ESSER 3, you're receiving about $11 million. 0 is included in the budget for next year because, first of all, I just found out about that amount. And also, it is booked as unearned revenue. So we book the revenue when it's spent. And we're not planning on spending it until we spend our ESSER 2 money because that expires first. So that's not included in the budget, and it has to be expended September 30th, 2024. We have an in-person instruction incentive grant, $1.4 million. $1.1 million of that is included in the budget. And then the EL, expanded learning opportunities, that's about $3 million, and about $2 million is included in the budget. When you saw the ELOP, the expanded learning opportunities plan, I think at the last board meeting, that's where this money was shown to be spent to you.
Can you go back to your statement about unearned revenue, that you book it when it's spent, so that means it will not reflect in our budgets?
It won't reflect in the budget as revenue or expenditure, well, until it becomes an expenditure.
Until it becomes an expenditure, and then it'll be both. So I'm assuming the money comes from somewhere else, basically. It's not actually in our.
No, so what she'll do is she'll, sorry, I don't mean to speak for you.
No, I don't mind. No, go ahead. So we may get the money, but we have 2 ways to book money. There's fund balance, where once we receive the money, then it is part of our revenue. We've earned it. It can carry over from year to year. And I don't determine how to book it, the government tells me how to do that.
Yeah.
And then there's unearned revenue, and it is unearned until you actually spend it. So it's in our bank account, but I can't actually put it on the books and count it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So how do, I guess, okay, you must keep a separate accounting then to know how much money is there, right?
Right, yeah, I do.
That's a very strange way to do accounting,
School financing is incredibly strange.
illegal. Sorry. We're not doing it though. I should have said that, sorry. I just mean that some of the practices that the state does, like the deferrals and stuff, they don't fall under standard accounting practices. It's
Right.
like
Creative financing.
creative financing at its finest, yes. Not our fault.
When I look at the LCFF, which I'll get to, and our revenue that's coming in, I am basing it on the reduction in students that we saw this year. So when I look at this next slide, it's actual ADA that I project. So this is not what we're going to be funded on. I just wanted to show the drop in the students that we're seeing right now and that we're hoping come back to our district after we open back up. Remember, in school finance, you're either receive revenue based on your current year or the prior year, whichever is higher in ADA. The prior year was COVID and they didn't do attendance. And so we'll go back to 1920 and be funded on that ADA number, that amount of average daily attendance for 1920. So so that's good for us. We'll have that money and we can see if the students come back and plan appropriately for the next year if they don't come back. If they do come back, and then our budget will be stronger, and that would be great. So when we look at revenue, 2021 is $45 million when you combine LCFF, federal money, state money, local money, and this is unrestricted. We're not looking at the restricted side and all that COVID money. This is just what we can spend on anything. 21-22, it shoots way up because we have electric buses that we have open POs and are on our books for this year for buying, but we're getting reimbursed next year. The electric buses are $2.4 million. So that is looking at local revenue next year. So that is a reimbursement. It's spent and we're getting it, so it's really zeroes out. It just shows in 2 different years. And then you can see each year after that, it goes up a little as our ADA will grow. I do, even though I'm starting next year at a lower ADA, I do have it growing each year because of the developments that are coming in. And we should see growth from that. So when you look at unrestricted revenue versus the expenditures, contributions, and transfers, there is the negative this year, $1.2 million of deficit spending. But that goes back to those buses that are over $2 million because we bought them this year with getting the revenue next year. So if you'll see the 21-22 revenue, it is $3 million something. You would have to take $2.2 million out of that and average the two out, just because it crosses years, it's confusing. So when you look at 22-23 and 23-24, that's more representative of what our surplus is each year, about $800,000 to $1 million each year. And then our unrestricted ending fund balance, it grows each year because we have a surplus each year. And then again, we have to spend some of this money so we get under that 10% reserve. Absent legislation, I should say, they are concerned about that for schools, and so they might pass some laws where they do away with that requirement. Other funds, Fund 17, as I said, we have $2.5 million in that, and we're saving some of that to pay for export and elementary if we have to prepay for anything before getting reimbursed. Our other post-employment benefits, we have $1.65 million in Fund 20, and then $345,000 actually put in the trust.
How much do we put in the trust each year?
Just $200,000 this year. We can put the Fund 20 in the trust. It's just, I would like to come back to school and see how many students we have and see how everything plays out. And then we can move what's from Fund 20 into the trust. Fund 20 will still take out The trust, once it's in there, we can never take it out.
Or, yeah, maybe a portion.
Correct.
Yeah. So because this is a budget, I wanted to just give some information about how money is allocated to the different sites and departments. I'm not going to go over each line, but I just provided this to you in case you have questions. Elementary schools receive $50 per student, and then they receive some Title I lottery money and some extra money. Wilson C. Riles, the only middle school, receives $75 per student, plus they get athletic budget, lottery, Title I money. Next slide. Center High School and McClellan High School receive $100 per student. I put McClellan receives a minimum of $7,500. So if their students drop to 50, they still receive money as if they have 75 students. If they go above that and have more than 75 students, then they'll get 100 per. So, and then you'll see the athletics at Center High costs $336,000. It's a big chunk of money for that program. And then I put every 15 minutes, we give some money for theater upkeep, et cetera. And then McClellan has comprehensive support and improvement money, CSI money, and they fund an academic coordinator with that money. Going to the department budgets, I don't break it down. I just wanted to give you an idea of where we spend our money again. This is unrestricted and restricted funding, and it includes all the salaries of personnel for each department. So that's the next 2 pages. And the last page is just some program budgets where the money is set aside in its own pot. So there's GATE for 30,000, et cetera. This district-wide technology, as I spoke about, usually we give 400,000, but I put $100,000 in the budget for that from general fund because we'll use some COVID money to fund the rest of that. And then some programs aren't in here, they're in the sites. So like every 15 minutes, we donate $5,000 from the district for that program, but that's included in Center High's budget, not separate in its own budget.
So with the technology, normally we put in 400,000, and this year we got the COVID money.
Mm-hmm.
So did the 400,000 go into a general fund?
Yes.
And
We spent well more than the
Right.
technology than the 400,000.
right, but we got COVID money for that.
Correct.
Okay,
So that-
and then next year we'll give technology again the 400,000.
Correct.
Or more, because what the allowable with a lot of the COVID money does allow for a lot of tech. So the budget's much more inflated.
But once the COVID money's gone, you're right, we'll go back to $400,000 for the department. And that wraps up a summary of the budget. Do you have any questions?
Well,
Could I make one comment about the technology piece too?
Only if you come to the microphone.
It's just we did do a couple of other things too with COVID money. We did a voice over IP system and then we replaced a whole bunch of our switches to make our internet really speedy. So we did on top of that, doing the Chromebooks, we did a lot of other cool stuff too,
Right.
to make us perform better.
And we also, I think, Craig, too, the other one I was thinking, I forgot those two, was we increased, didn't we change the fiber optic between us and Center High and then those switches? So the annex and all that had much needed speed increase.
A lot of good improvements, yeah.
thank you.
Do you have any questions, Dr. Lee?
No questions. I'm hoping for more for our GATE programs, especially at the elementary level, but I do realize the challenges. It's just really saddening to see the decline of gifted and talented education, not just in our district, but in so many districts. It's so sad for the students and the potentials for their academic futures. But I know, Lisa, there's nothing you can do about that with this budget report, but I'm just glad to see any amount devoted to that.
Don't we have gate money?
Yeah, and one
It's
thing,
just
Dr. Lee, I was going to say, and I'm sure you're aware, but one thing, when the state did away with the categorical, Center kept it. And while I agree, it would be nice as we look at budgets, we do still offer it and others have abandoned it. So I hear you. And I just want to point out, because we do that. And I think Ms. Bioni was running it for a while, and I'm totally drawing a blank on who was running it now. Katie Edwards. So we do have some good things happening, and it's great. We've been able to keep it in our budgets, and the board has always fought for that. So glad to hear you support that as well.
So we do have gate at each elementary site and Riles.
Correct.
Okay, quick question, a couple of little questions. You'd mentioned that all of the deferrals are remaining intact, but I thought I had heard that one of the deferrals had been eliminated.
So for this year, they're being paid back at the same schedule. So 2021, all of the deferrals from February to June are being paid back in the same schedule of July through whatever it was, again, November. In 21, 22, all of the deferrals were eliminated except the June to July one.
That's right, okay. And then I know that we're coming up to the period of time when we would have had to do a TRAN. And then maybe this is, I'm anticipating the next agenda, but the fund transfer that we're doing, is that to cover for what we would normally have done a TRAN?
So for the next agenda, no, it's so that I can move money into Fund 20. Fund 13 often goes negative because they're reimbursed after they pay for their expenditures, and that's the cafeteria fund, sorry. And so I sometimes have to make a loan from the general cafeteria fund to get them through, and then by the end of the year, the revenue comes back.
So we don't have to do anything to cover, we made it through.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yes.
Lived through, that was
Yes.
great. That's all. I'm sure I'll have more questions later.
I have a question about cafeteria, maybe it's either one of you. So I was reading the LCAP and I read that there was the issue of packaging of food because it's so expensive. And it's expensive to get prepackaged food and we don't have the space. So as the health service team package the food, let's say for, let's say let's pick Riles because I saw what their package looks like. Was that packaging reimbursed by the state?
Yes, so they were given pandemic relief funds, and they bought their grab and go bags and everything for that.
And it wasn't just the bags that unfortunately we saw in some people's yards. It was also the bags for distribution to the classrooms to keep, because the requirements, as you all know, for food service to keep them cold when we can take them and all that is significant. So we even had to buy to-go bags that we go drop at each school, almost like mini soft ice chests to keep them all at the correct temperature. And then as you see too, the packaging was much different than we had in the past. So yeah.
And they had to buy new terminals just because they needed to move people through quickly. And so they bought more than just that.
Right. Which is good. That's what the COVID dollars were for, to help us get those things versus go for it type of thing.
Moving forward.
Yep. Thanks, Lisa.
Do we have any public comment on the budget? No public comment? Do we have any other questions, comments from the board or anyone in the room?
I'm just going to keep my theme and thank Lisa and her department for doing this, because this also is not an easy feat. LCAP is one thing, and Lisa also helps significantly with the LCAP. So we need to acknowledge her work on this. And there were some crazy days, and I appreciate the board's willingness to push the meetings back to this regular schedule, because it saved someone in this room, probably a marriage and so anyway, but I want to thank her publicly for the effort that they've done, because it is not easy to pull it together, and so we appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coronado.
Thank you so much. We'll go ahead and adjourn the public hearing and reconvene the open session at 6:52. Thank you. All right, I'm trying to lift my finger to turn the page and I have a mask on. Advanced planning. Okay, future meeting dates, regular meeting Wednesday, June 16 at 6 p.m. here at Wiles Middle School, room 503, right here. Any suggested agenda items for future meetings?
And unfortunately, I don't think we have time to put anything because the agenda is done, but
Just
since,
further down the road.
since you have that, I do want to acknowledge our new Vice Principal Center High, HK, is with us. So I wanted to acknowledge HK in the room here. So anyway, I do not want to forget that. So thank you and welcome.
And we're going to have more reports tonight, so we are ready for any sort of motion we wanted to make.
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah, motion to adjourn by Mrs. Anderson, second by Mrs. Pope. And roll call vote, Dr. Lee,
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson.
Aye.
Mrs. Pope. Aye. Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Good night, everybody.